And good evening, everybody. I'm Cynthia Canty. It is such a pleasure to congratulate Parallel 45, director Shelby Lewis and the cast on the production you just saw of the Thanksgiving play. So glad to have all of you with us for the after show conversation with playwright Larissa FastHorse, who is here with us from California. Larissa, welcome. It's so good to have you, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here and get to hear and I haven't heard the end of that play in a little while, so it was fun to hear.
Nice to see you back. I have to say, we start with some congratulations. You were recently named a Macarthur Genius Grant recipient. And did I read when you got the call, you thought it was spam and you weren't even going to pick it up?
I didn't answer like 3 times. They finally had to text me and tell me they needed to talk to me about something. And I assumed they wanted to hire me for, to consult about some Indigenous program or whatever. And so I was completely taken off guard. Absolutely.
I'm wondering, I don't often get to talk to someone who is a Macarthur Genius Grant recipient. What does this grant mean for you symbolically and practically?
Oh, wow. It means so many things. Practically, it means my bills are paid for at least 5 years, more than that, hopefully, because we're not planning to live crazy. But my bills are paid for 5 years in advance, which I've never experienced as an artist. I've never experienced more than 6 months that I knew we could pay our rent. So this is pretty incredible, and trying to figure out what that will mean for our creativity. I'm married to a sculptor, actually, his work's on the wall behind me. So what that's going to mean for our creativity, to take off that constant pressure just to make rent. I don't know how that's going to be. I haven't experienced it yet. I'm really excited. I think symbolically, it means a great deal, even more than I thought it would. I'm getting really cool invitations now to do cool stuff. I get to, I'm being asked to advise about national arts policy and do a lot of fun talks like this. And although we'd already planned to do this before that, and do a lot of really cool things already that I wasn't offered before. So it's exciting just to see where it leads and what sort of creativity it will open for me.
Doors are open, and financially you'll get some breathing space. That has got to be just amazing. The Thanksgiving play, it was one of the 10 most produced plays in 2019, but you've said that you consider this your most depressing success. Why is that, Larissa?
Yeah, I wrote this play because I had kind of reached a ceiling in theater where, I was making my living, it was what I did as my job, but I just couldn't get past that multiple production place. So my plays would get maybe 2 productions. I think once I got 3 and that's it. And so the reason I was told again and again by theaters was that it was casting. My plays were called uncastable, even one that had only one half Native American character in it. And I was like, okay, I was just so fed up. And I said, fine, American theater. I know audiences want to hear about contemporary Indigenous stories. I know they want to see this work. So I'm going to create a play with 4 white presenting people in one room. If you can't cast and produce that, then we have another problem, right? And the good news is, I always say, I really love this play. It says all the things I want to say. It talks about all the issues I want to talk about. It makes people think in the way that I want my plays to make people think. But I did have to do it with 4 white presenting people, which is kind of a bummer. And I hope going forward in the future, that isn't the case.
At least you put out that dare card and you laid it down and theater took it. It's been produced.
They did.
I was real interested, Larissa, when I read that you wrote this work in Ireland, which certainly knows a few things about having its culture and its history and its land taken over by unwanted outsiders. Did the nation of poets and writers leave its mark on you?
Oh yeah, it definitely did. It was interesting because I did this in the first 10 days. I was at a retreat at Anna McCarrig, which is Tyrone Guthrie's wife's home, but they call it his home in the way of that time. And so it was the first few days I was hearing all the voices in with an Irish accent, which was not helpful because I'm trying to write about a very American holiday. So once I got that out of my head, it was really incredibly helpful because there were several people at this artist retreat with me that were original Irish. And so we got to talk a lot about what that experience is like for us here in the United States versus what it's like for them. And they're dealing with so many similar things where the dominant culture came in, being the UK came in and kind of packaged what they liked about original Irish culture and then sold it and made it a commodity that they could sell and looked interesting, and you could put it on 100 belt buckles and whatever, and they just picked and chose the things that they thought was interesting and marketable
That
about
had to
original
resonate.
Irish.
That really
Yeah,
had
and
to
so
resonate with you.
yeah, it's like absolutely that's what we're dealing with all the time here. So I get a lot of feedback from those folks when we talk about the issues in the play and how it related to the original Irish folks, and it was super helpful and really interesting to have that feedback right there.
So as we just saw, the Thanksgiving play takes aim at that mythology of the Pilgrims and the Indians finding peace over a meal, and Indians sharing and teaching white Europeans. You grew up in South Dakota. You're a member of the Lakota Nation. What did
Mhm.
Thanksgiving Day, that Thanksgiving week, what did that mean to you and your family when you were growing up?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. I grew up in a time that was called the era of reconciliation in South Dakota, where the state was trying to reconcile with Indigenous peoples. So, like at school, we didn't have any of these plays, these little interstitial scenes that were represented in the play that you just saw. None of these little pageants or whatever about pilgrims and Indians. For us, it was about harvest, which is very applicable into South Dakota, which is an agricultural state. It was about fall, it was about change of season, it was about gratitude and family, and a lot of really fantastic things. So it's absolutely one of my favorite holidays because who doesn't love a whole day about gratitude? That's great.
You
I really enjoy it.
you didn't have that mythology narrative that so many Americans grew up with. What did you feel when you started researching and digging, and you kind of learned what that myth was?
Yeah, it was shocking. I was actually just looking for, I don't remember what, but some factual thing because there's so many myths about as you heard, Caden only did,
Yes.
in the end, Caden only did maybe half of the different Thanksgivings that I'd researched and gave us information about that because it just obviously got a little old. It wasn't that entertaining, but there's so much more that was in his original research. And so I was researching something, and one of these shocking children's pageant pieces came up, and I couldn't believe it was real and that it was now. I thought maybe it's a satire or something, but it was a real thing. And then I started looking specifically for them, and even that line where the teacher's comments, I had my students say Indian instead of Indian. That's a real teacher's comment from 2013. I mean, it's not like it's super old or anything.
And then
And
I want to
yeah,
ask you about that. That one stuck in my mind. Oh, they love when we say engines. So that
yeah.
is the real thing. You did not have to exercise any poetic license for that.
No, that one I just took right from what a teacher said.
Do you think the teachers making up those songs like the 12 Days of Thanksgiving and that comment about, oh, my kids love when we say engines, do you think have they any awareness at how racist that is? I mean, I know you're not
I
in
have,
their heads. What do you think?
yeah, I don't know. I sincerely hope, I hope that they don't know. I hope that they're not aware and that, I would actually rather it be ignorance, I think, than, well, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd rather it be ignorance or open racism. I've often said I did a play called What Would Crazy Horse Do that involved the Klan. And I worked with some members of a particular branch of the Klan for like a year and a half to research for that play. And it was actually easier to work with them than a lot of like really well-meaning folk, but ignorant folk, because they're clear. I knew exactly where they stood. I knew what they were going for. There was no confusion. There's no wishy-washiness. We were very open and honest with each other, and I knew what was happening. Where sometimes I feel like ignorance is really more dangerous because people are, especially well-meaning ignorance, right? Because people are trying so hard to not offend and to kind of go back and forth, and you never know where you stand, and so you never get anywhere. And I hope, I don't know what I hope. I hope they're not racist, but willful ignorance is kind of scary too.
Well, you really do drill down on this issue of performative wokeness, and I
Mhm.
was struck by a comment I saw in an interview with you. You said people being afraid of offending. You call that the biggest enemy of your career as a Native American woman. How do the well-meaning or the woke get it most wrong?
Wow, yeah. I think one of the biggest ones that I'm seeing lately is, I think would be summed up probably in Jackson, is is believing they've done the work and they understand and that they're now here to teach you. And I mean, I have people do that to me. White folks do that to me all the time. Teach me about what it's like to be an indigenous person. I'm like, wait, what? Because they have a friend,
Cringing.
and like, but they've done the work, and they went to a bunch of seminars and classes and anti-racism training, and it's really fascinating how people do all they start out meaning well, like they want to help other people, but then they end up just centering themselves again and putting themselves in the center, and that's pretty frightening, and they suddenly become the expert on everything. And I see that happening a lot lately with all the kind of anti-racism work and awareness we have building right now in this field. There's a lot of kind of scary centering of voices that maybe should not be the ones speaking for others.
You're echoing things that we heard all this year in this country during the Black Lives Matters issue. Like where do people who are not Indigenous or people who are not of color who want to be allies, where do they do it and how? I think is a stumbling block for folks. What do you think is a good way or a not good way for someone to be an ally?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big one is to be able to listen, be willing to listen, and be willing to understand that you may be, even if you are the well-meaning one and you are the one that's always tried to do it right, you still may have to hear some of the pain that people are dealing with, the terrible things that people say to us every day. I mean, I would say 80% of Thanksgiving play is actual dialogue taken from things people have said to me in my life, and not the worst. I mean, I've heard much worse. I was at a theater event a couple years ago, and well-meaning, East Coast Jewish woman, big theater supporter, really prides herself on being a really liberal, person, fellow oppressed person. We'd been talking at a theater fundraiser, and she hadn't gotten my name in the beginning. At the end, she asked who I was, and I told her, and I said, yeah, I'm a playwright. She's like, oh, and you're Native American? I said, yeah. She's like, I never would have guessed. You're so well spoken.
Oh.
And it's like, wow, okay, great. I'm glad we're in the same war here together. But she considers herself a really strong ally. And so, I mean, things like that happen all the time. And so that don't do that.
Don't do that.
but
Don't do that.
but do be willing to make a mistake. Do be willing to sometimes say the wrong thing and then fix it. And don't get defensive.
Mhm.
Fix it, change it, listen to what people are telling you, and do things differently.
And certainly voices like yours trying to express that message through theater. What is it about theater, do you think, is a good way to try to get your message of being aware of the Indigenous people's point of view? Why does theater work so well for that?
Honestly, theater was the world that was willing to do this.
Mm.
It was a place that, because I started in film and television, and film and TV was not interested in getting things right at that time, with about a dozen years ago. It was really about theater coming and saying to me, we want to do this and we want to do it right. So they were willing to give me the platform to speak in the way I want to. And they were very willing to accept the challenges that I put to theaters. I always put 2 challenges to every theater that works with me on a new production: that I can't be the only Indigenous art in the season, and I can't be the only Indigenous person paid in the season. And I'm super excited about how theater took that on for my very first play, and has really worked hard to fulfill those challenges and create new relationships, bring in lots of Indigenous audience members, providing accessibility, not just about money, but accessibility in the culture of our theaters, because the culture of theater is incredibly white. The culture of our spaces is making all these assumptions based on white culture. And so the theater companies I work with have always been willing to change, to provide elder seating, to understand that we live in multi-generational families, and we like that, and to allow multi-generational people to come and not place restrictions on who's allowed to come to my plays. It's been beautiful to see how open and willing theater is. I'm going to respond to something here. I said, would you have mentioned it if she was a Methodist? No, because she was very big on letting me know that she was Jewish and that's why we should connect. I'm sorry, but someone put that question there. So that's why I said, because she was very like, I get Native people because I'm Jewish, and so I understand, and it was a big part of her identity and why we should connect. And so, no, I mean, if that was a big part of her identity, absolutely, I would have mentioned it. But this woman was very specific about.
Speaking of questions, we are getting questions from our viewers, and I have an interesting question here. How has this play been received by the Native American communities?
It's been awesome. I've been so excited. The places where I've been, I mean, it's played dozens of places I haven't been, but the places where I've been, we've had such a fantastic time. The very first production actually was in Portland, Oregon, even though the world premiere is technically in New York City.
Mm.
And we had this huge like Native American night, and we had a local Native organization sponsored a big party. It was really exciting because when I'm in theater, let's be honest, and white people are the vast majority of our audiences in American theater. And to go into a predominantly white institution, which is where I was in Portland, it's not an indigenous specific institution, and to be in an audience where almost the entire house was Native American was so exciting and so much fun. And no one laughs harder at the kicking heads than Native American people. I mean, you got to laugh or cry, and it's true, So
Yeah.
you got to go one way or the other. It's been great. Same thing, Playwrights Horizons. When we were in New York, we had this incredible. We had Native American nights, and then we also had this beautiful art installation that went through the lobby and into the theater. That one indigenous artist curated and had all these people submit from around the country. So people got to have these incredible experiences with indigenous art, but also then, of course, the artists that we brought in. And we had all these other indigenous, whenever we do my plays, we try to bring other indigenous artists in, and we do readings with other other writers, and so that they get connected to these theaters. And it's just really been exciting to have all these really cool experiences and events, spoken word, rap, marketplace, Native American marketplaces in the lobbies, all these different things have happened around this play, which has been really the best part of it to me.
That's wonderful. Joseph writes a question and he says, amazing work. I'm so glad I resisted the temptation to get to know this specific work before experiencing it. And he says to you, Larissa FastHorse, you seem so equally adept at skewering our American whiteness, history, elementary education, and the American theater kind of in one satirical swoop. Is there anything that brings you personal joy kind of in watching people maybe squirm or people become enlightened at an uncomfortable moment?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the best for everybody, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
awkward moment. I mean, if you're talking about comedy, which is what I'm doing, I'm doing a
Yes.
comedy within a satire. That moment of like, oh, they're totally about to step in it and you can see it coming and they do. And it's classic, drama, comedic drama, right? And so I love all of it. I love it when I screw up all the time. And I write it down because I'm going to use it later. I mean, if we can't laugh, again, you have to laugh or cry. If we can't laugh at our mistakes and then work to change them and then work to correct them, we're just doomed. We're not going to get anywhere. So,
Well,
and no one
Joseph,
wants to like,
nobody.
oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, no one wants to like also go to theater. And I don't know, I personally, some people do. I personally don't want to go to theater and just be like given medicine. Like, I want it to be fun. I want to go and enjoy myself and have fun, but I also want to learn and question and wonder about things. So.
Well, and Joseph's note is, it's there's a long tradition of using theater as a weapon, in a sense,
Yeah.
and his final comment is Pila Maya from one middle-aged white man who found it so challenging it hurt. So
No. Well,
there's
I'm okay with that. Great.
yeah. We also want to let everybody know we do have director Shelby Lewis here too. If you have any questions for Shelby, and people are going, yay. Christine wants to know, what do you hope will change in American theater as a result of this pandemic? And I had wondered that too. When you stop and you think about what this last year has been like, theater's been hit. The biggies have been hit. The casts and crews of that, Hamilton and Wicked, and their home, the regional folks, the local theater companies. And I'm wondering, what do you think might come? Could there be a reset because of this time of the pandemic?
Yeah. So just personally, I like to differentiate between the pandemic and the actual pandemic, which is a real thing that's killing people that I've suffered. My father has had it. My sister's had it. I've known many people have died. So that's one thing. Theater is related to, I think you're talking about the shutdown, which is a
Yes,
very different thing.
absolutely.
And I would like to separate those because theater is an art form and a job. It is not life and death, which the pandemic is. And I don't want to put theater on the same level of that.
No.
So if you're talking about the shutdown, which I assume you mean, I really hope that I just hope we survive. I hope
Sure.
that, we are losing so many artists right now, and technical workers and front of house workers and people. I mean, we're losing them. They're retraining. They're going to other work. They're leaving the centers where their job was because their job has disappeared. And I think, the biggest thing I just hope is that we can get them back, because we're losing so many wonderful people that have poured their life into a field that they have so much passion for. And I just hope we're able to, find a way to center the humans and bring them back. And I'd written about this earlier in the year that, you know, maybe next year, next fall, hopefully, when we're all back in the theater, we don't need to have a huge, crazy, pyrotechnic, whatever, special
Mhm.
effect, moving set, something. Maybe we need to just do something much smaller and pay a lot more people. And we need to sit in a circle and tell stories. Maybe we need to help each other heal in the best way that storytelling and theater can do. I hope that theater is healing when we return. I hope it's funny. I'd like to laugh for like the next 2 years. It's been a really rough pandemic for me
Yeah.
and my family. And so I hope that theater is able to do all those best things in keeping us together and helping us heal.
And bringing us together physically, which is going to be so
Yeah.
wonderful when that can happen. Catherine Mazer has a good question that actually echoes something I had wondered about, but I'm going to let her ask this question. And she said, Larissa, thank you for this play. My husband and I are both white K through 12 educators. We're working hard to honor our responsibilities. So you hit home. If you could speak directly to teachers, and you are right now, what would you say?
Oh, I'd say, you know, yeah, educate yourself. Educate yourself. Find out why things are missing from your curriculum. Don't just rely on the curriculum. Don't rely on the books they give you. Don't rely on white written material, material written by the outsiders. Go directly to the source. Go to the people on whose land you are standing and find out who they are, if they're there or not, and if not, why, and if they are, get to know them. Find out how you and your students can be of service to those people. What do they need? What help can you provide? Make sure every single little person that you're responsible for in that classroom knows who those people are and knows what land they're standing on, can say a couple words in their language. So you do that if you go to any country, you go to that country, you know who they are. You know you're in France. You know you're in France as opposed to China. You make that decision. You know you're there. You learn a few words in their language. It's just respectful. And so I would hope you could teach your little people to do the same thing, because they are living in someone else's country on a sovereign nation. And so you need to know whose it is and be respectful. And just do education. Someone mentioned earlier, I'm wearing a Maria Tallchief shirt, this designed by Stephen Paul Judd. And it was, I was on Facebook recently because it's Native American Heritage Month.
Mm-hmm.
In case you don't know, you should.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking, and someone mentioned Maria Tallchief. They'd gone through um, arts education at Barnard College as a dancer and performer. They spent an entire quarter on George Balanchine and never once mentioned Maria Tallchief. She was his wife. She was the first prima ballerina of any race in the United States of America. She was an inspiration for some of the most famous ballets in his repertoire. Never mentioned the woman once. I mean, that's intentional. That's intentional erasure. And that's just not acceptable anymore. Never was, but definitely isn't now.
As a matter of fact, Jody noticed that you are wearing a Maria
Mhm.
Tallchief shirt. And she wanted to know, who are some artistic icons that you look up to and you perhaps want to emulate or you're inspired by?
Yeah, actually, Maria Tallchief was I was a classical ballet dancer
Yes.
and a Balanchine dancer before I was a playwright. And Maria Tallchief was actually the reason that I believed I could do that. I saw her in a book, and that someone had given me about like successful women. Oops, sorry, I had a
Oh,
old alarm on. Sorry about that. I
no
turned on my
problem.
ringer, but not my
We're all
alarm.
friends.
Yeah. So I saw her. I had been given a book about successful women, like scientists and whatever, and one of them, I opened this page and there was Maria Tallchief. And I was like, oh my goodness, she's half Native American, half white. She lives in Oklahoma, just about as middle of nowhere as South Dakota.
Mhm.
And she became a ballerina. And I thought, well, that means that's a real thing. And I can do that too. I was in ballet at the time. And I'd never seen a ballet. And yet by seeing that book and seeing her represented there made me in the middle of the prairie believe that this was something I could do. And I did.
And then that kind of dovetails into a question from Nan. Why did you choose to use the subject of creating theater itself as a vehicle for what you wanted to say? And why choose playwriting instead of some other solution or form of expression?
Yeah, actually, playwriting chose me. I was working in film and television, and like I said, they were I'd sold 2 television shows and that I created. And at the end of 6 months of working on each of those shows, um, and I was by myself. I didn't have a crew, I didn't have a producer with me. I didn't have an agent then. So I was working all alone, kind of fighting with the networks. And at the end of 6 months, neither of those shows made it on the air, and I was relieved. And I said to myself, well, that's no way to live your life. I just had this amazing career in ballet that I love so much. And now I have this new career, and I was happy that it was failing. And that's not okay. And so theater actually found, and I didn't know what to do. And theater commissioned my first play at the Children's Theater Company of Minneapolis. And I just walked in and was like, oh, okay, this is it. Like I said, I often said, this is Dancers with Furniture. I get this. But it also was just a place that was willing to let me have a larger influence than just writing a script. I got to, like I said, influence bringing other people in. I got to open a door and hold it open for other artists, and audience members. And that was so important to me. So that's why theater worked for me. It's also
Mhm.
natural to Indigenous peoples who've been doing theater for centuries, and so it's a natural form. I also hide a lot of my Indigenous theatrical forms in these plays. There's a very traditional Lakota storytelling technique that's actually in the Thanksgiving play. There's different things that I sneak in, and people don't always understand it, but that's okay. You don't have to. You're learning new ways
You're,
of making theater.
you're being exposed. People are being
Yeah,
exposed. Well, right now, I think we have people Googling Maria Tallchief. We just had somebody just say, now,
good. They
who's that
should.
again? And it's like, yeah. I mean, I don't know that many people knew that was George Balanchine's wife. And as you say, talk about
Mhm.
erasure, just
Yeah.
not at
Well,
all.
one
Not
of several, to be
one.
fair.
Yes. Okay. This is a really terrific question from Christine Marie Brown. What do you recommend that theater artists who don't feel they have access to Native American actors, what do they do?
Yeah, that's it's a tricky one, I will
Yeah.
say. You obviously the playwright owns the play, so it's ultimately up
Mhm.
to them, and it's their decision. So I would not speak for any other playwright. For myself, I've been willing to do a lot of different things. One especially, I had a Native American director and professor at a university here in California, and that is a small liberal arts college. And their theater department had never in the history of the department had a Native American person in it. And so they wanted to do What Would Crazy Horse Do? And they'd never produced a native play either. And she felt it was really important for the community to hear this story. And so the play is about 2 Native American twins, a brother and sister. So they're twin Native siblings. So we thought, well, she really wanted to do this play, and I really supported this community hearing this play. And so we decided to intentionally cast a Black man and an Asian woman as the Native American twins from the theater department, obviously. To be 100% clear, we're not trying to pass these people off as anything. We're not trying to pretend they're actually twins, clearly. We really made it as obvious as possible. We wrote about it extensively in the program, and then we had talks about it like every weekend. And it was really incredible because one, it made the school think a lot about the fact that they've never had a Native American person in their theater department, and two, it really made the community think about that as well. And like, what does it mean to have no Native American people? So that's a choice I've made, and it was a very conscious decision made with an Indigenous director, and with my consultation. Um, I've had other times that my plays have been read by non-native people when there are native roles, and I've allowed that because it was more about just developing the play, not about a particular character needing to represent something. But also, I would say don't assume there aren't native actors. So Kansas City Rep, when I was actually working on that same play, my first workshop there, they said, well, we can only, for workshops, we have a limited budget. We can only fly in one actor, and we don't have any native actors here. And I said, okay, well then let's fly in the woman. I need to work on that part the most. So we flew in the sister, and then when we got in the room, it turned out the brother who had just graduated from the MFA program was Native American. he'd never told anybody because there'd never been a Native American part in the 6 years he'd been going to school. No one had ever asked if he was Native American because there just weren't any roles, because no one ever produced a Native American play. And then it turned out the white woman who plays a Klan leader was Native American as well, and she was an instructor at the university. I mean, you don't know. And so don't assume that they aren't there, because we're everywhere, which is awesome. We've survived, we've thrived. And, just don't assume that. So I would just say, we're everywhere. There's most likely a Native American community house in your area that you can go and find out who are the Native people, who are the performers. Maybe they do a different kind of performance that will translate into more Western style theater, but we're there. And then there's also other options depending on the playwright.
Ellen has a question. How do we talk about difficult topics like the ones you are exploring in this play, with listening on both sides? Because it always seems like she feels one group has to lean in versus both trying to meet face to face and understand each other.
Yeah, well, that's not always the case, honestly. I mean, if you're standing on my land that you stole from me, I don't feel like I need to lean in as much as you do. So there you are. If you're profiting off of stolen land and you're not acknowledging that, and you're not doing anything to reconcile that, then you need to lean in more. So that's
Fair
the
enough.
case. So sometimes, both sides do need to lean in, but sometimes they don't. Obviously, I have a lot of compassion for primarily white theater audiences that I wrote this for, because there's a lot of humor and there's a lot of fun and there's a lot of just enjoyment. And I intentionally made this a comedy and a satire because I want people to have fun, and I don't want them to feel beat up. I want them to have a good time, but I do want them to think, and I want people to question everything you've been taught, and question, why was I taught it that way? Why did they tell me this? Why did they leave all this out? Why have I never heard of Maria Tallchief? I want you to think about it and question it and start to look for the right answers. And also then going forward, question everything you're told. Why am I only getting half the narrative, if that much? And really start figuring out how you get the full narrative.
If someone has now discovered you through the Thanksgiving play and they want to read more of your work, what would you hope they look at next?
Oh yeah. It depends which way you want to go. If you want to go super dark, I love what Crazy Horse do. And actually TCG Books is publishing a book that's going to have the Thanksgiving play and What Would Crazy Horse Do together. I think it comes out, I want to say February. It's moved back so many times because of COVID. I'm not sure anymore, but TCG Books will have that, so you can get the two plays together. They're super different, but a lot of the same. You'll see a lot of the same themes, but in one from a very kind of dark way and one from a very funny satirical way. I have a lot of. I like to always mention that I do a lot of intergenerational work, because I like to be able to create work for multi-generational families. So if you look at dramatic publishing or plays for young audiences, if you have families, I have work there that's appropriate for the whole family to read together. Thanksgiving plays through Concord theatricals, so you can always get it there if you are dying to have it before the book comes out from TCG.
I think Laura absolutely sums up how everybody is feeling about this evening. And as she writes, thank you, Larissa. You have given us something to think about while making us laugh, even in embarrassment, and reflect and hopefully change, which I suspect is what you're looking for. That's what you were going for. Yes. When people who have seen your play, and they've seen this play, when they sit down to observe Thanksgiving Day next week, what seeds do you hope that you've planted in people's minds?
Gosh, like it really just this, my plays, I always say, they ask more questions than they answer. And some people find that frustrating because they want to know all the answers. But you're going to have to work for them. And that's just part of it. My plays intentionally do not answer things. So my hope is that it plants a seed of what am I saying? Curiosity and a real desire and need to learn more and to educate yourself and to get out there and find better answers. So yeah.
Well, we want to thank you very, very much for doing all of this. A real quick question for Shelby, if you're there. Folks are wondering what Parallel
Yeah,
45
good job,
is going
Shelby.
to do. Yeah, Shelby, what is Parallel 45 going to do? The question comes about further works by Indigenous artists.
I'm obsessed with that question, and I'm so grateful that Larissa put that challenge to us, and I have no doubt that that is the next thing that we will talk about on the call. I just incredible. I appreciate that as from a playwright perspective of just owning your own power and your own voice, because so many times as actors or directors, once we get the page, we forget about the person behind it. This has been such an incredible opportunity to meet you, to discuss with you, to hear your voice even through what we've done. That's why it was important for us, even in a staged reading version, to have someone who's reading stage directions be a presenting person of color and a true person of color, but just to make sure that that was obvious, because we needed that presence there, just like the play itself was. So I appreciate everything that this play is. I've seen it and directed it and read it a million times and cannot stop laughing and cannot stop thinking every single time. So thank you for this. And we look forward to the continued discussion.
There you go. You opening doors. Well, this really has been so much fun sharing this evening. Perfect timing to do this in the run up to this month. And here we are in Native American History Month. And I guess one final thing before I let you go, when you think, Larissa, about the kinds of criticisms we hear of Black History Month, where it's like, okay, 4 weeks talking in very broad strokes about Black leaders while school textbooks are glossing over the horrors of slavery, and then we move on. How do you think we can do better for Black history, for National Native American History Month? I mean, how can it become more than window dressing?
Yeah, I, honestly, I mean, we're in a very different place as far as Native American Heritage Month and Black History Month, in that kind of, I'd say 90% of this country doesn't celebrate it or acknowledge it. So I think we'd be thrilled to be.
Got a ways to go to get there.
Yeah, we're not even in the window. So, and it's been a thing for like 30 some years, 30, 40 years. I don't even know, maybe more. I don't even know my history. It's been for as long as I've been around. So this is a thing. It's a national thing. And so I would love everyone just to start there. We just need to start there. We're in a very different place than the African-American folks in this country as far as our representation and people acknowledging that we're here. And that they're, on our land, and that, people are all, I'm right now not on my own land. I'm on someone else's lands that have been taken from them. And it's the Tongva Keech Gabrielino people, and on the border of the Chumash people. And I'm always looking for ways to, how can I repay that? So we all have to first acknowledge that we're on, just that would be huge in America, to just acknowledge we're on stolen land. And then now what can I do to pay something back, to pay back part of that debt? And so I think about that every day. How do I pay back the debt to these people? And I do a lot of things, both through my work and my personal life, as I'm capable, to constantly try to pay back the people on whose land I'm standing. And so that's, I think, a way forward for all of us that would be meaningful and true and real. And if we all started doing that, have a completely different country and a completely different relationship to our history that's shared together on this continent.
Well, you've given us so much to think about between watching your play and then having this conversation with us. Larissa FastHorse, thank you so much for being with us. And we want to thank everyone, the whole bunch of you who joined us tonight. Thank you for supporting Parallel 45 and the National Writers Series. So thank you so much. This has been so fun. And everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will all look forward to being together in person again when we come through this. Thank you so much, Larissa.
Thank you, Cindy. It's been great.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
What a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Larissa, and thank you, Cynthia. And thanks again to the major sponsors who made this event possible: Cordia, West Shore Bank, Susan and Al Cogswell, Copy Central and Traverse Reproduction. But most of all, we want to thank you for tuning in and for your continued support of the National Writer Series and Parallel 45 Theater. Be sure to check out parallel45.org to learn about their winter theater classes and private lessons for you or the young theater fan in your life, as well as learn about their upcoming events. And be sure not to miss the National Writer Series upcoming event on December 3rd, when we'll have an eye-opening conversation with the award-winning author Albert Woodfox. We'll be discussing his book Solitary, which was a finalist for the National Book Award in Nonfiction and a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in General Nonfiction. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.